And welcome to a special edition of College Road Trip. It is the National Championship edition, along with Ryan Thies. I'm Barry Nelson. Thank you very much for joining us. And Ryan, special night tonight. We have the National Championship, UNC and Gonzaga. It's going to be a fun night.
Yeah, grand finale, March Madness. Two very good teams, two one seeds going up against each other. Just a battle of two really good teams. Going to be a great game.
And in order to commemorate this special occasion, we thought, hey, what a great idea to bring the panel back. So we brought everybody back that was on our show that where we made our predictions in our bracket. We brought back Geoff Chiles, who is a producer and host with WTKA in Ann Arbor. Garrett, who is with Riding the Pine Network and site manager of The Only Colors. He's an MSU insider. And also Christian Heimall, our favorite, our friend. I don't want to say our favorite because that'll make the other two panelists sound like they're not our favorite. We like you all guys. We like all you guys just the same. But he's going to be joining us as well. But just a little bit of house cleaning to do before we actually get to the weekend here. De'Aaron Fox, University of Kentucky, declared for the NBA draft today. He projects as a lottery pick. Is he a lottery pick?
I think he could be. Yeah, he'll test the water. If not, just mid first round, definitely. But I mean, it's Kentucky. It's just churning out one and dones.
Well, and the one thing that I saw, I read a piece by Kyle Tucker, who is a SEC insider, and I follow him on Twitter, and it's a great read, talking about the number of Kentucky players that are in the NBA right now, and I wanna bring on a couple of these guys to talk about this a little bit. First of all, Christian, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Dom. Thank you very much for joining us, and also Geoff. Once again, thank you for joining us. Dominic, you cover college basketball just about as much as any of us do. Is it surprising the number of the number of players that the University of Kentucky churns out every year? They have 20 players, They have players on 20 of the 32 NBA teams.
No, it doesn't surprise me at all. Like, this is what Cal does, right? Like, Cal is not known for when kids come to Kentucky, they don't go there to win a national championship. They go there to reach the NBA. And that's what Cal does. He's been doing it for years and years and years. He will continue to do it. There's a reason that they're not playing tonight is because their team never totally played like a team. I'm sorry, Big Blue Nation. That's just the way that it is. But they're the most talented team if you want to look top to bottom roster. And yeah, like when you watch Kentucky play, you go, all right, so that guy's going to be in the league. That guy's going to be in the league. That guy's going to be in the league. It doesn't surprise me. I don't think it's going to stop unless there's some sort of a NCAA violation that's going to come to light that's going to run Cal out of town. But yeah, I think that it's just going to keep on happening. It's not a surprise to me.
Geoff, is De'Aaron Fox a lottery pick, or is he one of those guys that maybe goes 15, 16?
I think he certainly showed what he could do. In Kentucky's loss, the way they ended the tournament, I think he's got a whole array of skills that's going to benefit him in the NBA and at that level. I think he will. I think Kentucky, that trend will continue for them. They put players up high in the draft every year, and just if you saw what he did throughout the entirety of the tournament, I just don't think that's gonna. I think that's gonna benefit him obviously more than harm him. I don't think he'll slip down to 15 or 16.
Another note in college basketball today, Christian. We want to get your take on this. Georgetown hiring Patrick Ewing as their next coach. Is this a good call? And if not, who else could you have filled the opening with?
Tom Crean. Does that ring a bell to anybody? I mean, a pretty good college coach who's done this before, has recruited before. I don't like the idea of pro guys going down to the collegiate level. I don't like it. It's two different realms. There's a reason why college coaches, other than Larry Brown, have never been successful at the pro level, and that's it's a high schooler's living room and trying to convince his parents to let him come play for you. It's not going to the draft and saying who's the best possible guy and how much money do I have to pay him. It's a much different style. It goes the entire summer long. Patrick Ewing is now going to have to sit in high school gymnasiums in June and July when realistic on a beach somewhere after a successful offseason or a successful season in the pros. I don't 100% like this move. I understand why they did it. They needed a name. They needed something to get people excited back in Georgetown because they've had some rough seasons down there for the Hoyas. And when you've got a guy like Chris Mullen, who is a Big East alum just up the road in St. John's and had this massive something to get the alumni and the fan back, I understand why they did it. I don't like it personally. I really thought a guy like Tom Crean he's out there. I don't understand why he lost his job in the first place, and I don't understand why he still hasn't found one. So he would have been great. I would have loved to have seen Coach Hurley from Rhode Island get an opportunity at one of those schools. I think he's tremendous and deserving of that opportunity, but not going to be this year. So we'll see what happens. I'm interested for the terms of everything to really fall through and what happens with Georgetown, but I'm not a huge fan of this hire, although I completely understand why they did it.
Well, Ryan, the big thing that they're talking about is Patrick Ewing went there. He can sell the university, and this is for them a long-term solution. They want him to be there for years and years. They're going to give him a very long leash because he is such a great alum. Is this really a good choice for them? I mean, or is this just kind of a stopgap?
See, I think it's good, not great, in my opinion. He's got the name. He's got the alumni status, and he can go far with that, but I don't think as far as Georgetown wants to go with that. There's a pretty low ceiling for that. I mean, he's going to Big East, and they've got some pretty good talent there. Villanova, Xavier, Butler, just to name a few. And it's just a new territory for him. So I think Tom Crean would have done a much better job, but as Christian said, I can see where they came with this, try to make the fans happy, getting Patrick Ewing. He's wanted to be this coach for a long time and finally gets the opportunity, so we'll just have to see how it works out.
And we have Corey Pieper who says, I'm glad Crean still doesn't have a job, shouldn't have left Marquette. He shouldn't have. I don't believe he should have either. And also you have Tim, I believe this is a relation to you. It says it's easier to go to college to pro than going the other way. And I think I think there's something to be said about that because there's not a lot of people that can go pro to college and be successful. Larry Brown, mentioned by Christian, was one of the only ones that really could do that. But that's some of the news and notes for the day. Let's get to what we were really wanting to get to. I want to get everybody's initial take on this past weekend. South Carolina, Gonzaga, Oregon, North Carolina. Ryan, what were your first takes? What was your takeaway from the entire weekend? Just a broad general take from this weekend.
I think the best teams won. South Carolina, good run. Congrats on making it to the Final Four. Sorry, but clock struck midnight on that run. Still plenty to be proud of if you're the Gamecocks. Gonzaga just finally gets to national championship. Karnowski, just a phenomenal player, real big inside. That is one of the biggest tools that they're going to implement here tonight. Oregon, UNC. UNC didn't play a very good game and still came out on top because of rebounding. Kennedy Meeks came up huge, and the rebounding came up huge in the last couple seconds too. They missed all 4 of their free throws and still won that game because of getting those offensive rebounds.
Fundamentals. Dominic, what did you think about what were your initial takeaways from this past weekend?
I think that's a really great point. The best teams won. I think that, you see a lot of, me, for one, super stoked for the Zags that they were able to pull it out. Being a native now of the state of Washington, just really excited to see Coach Few finally break through, get to the Final Four, and then make it to the national championship game. And yeah, that rebounding. Kennedy Meeks is an absolute beast. What he was able to do. It speaks volumes to what boxing out can actually do for you in big time situations when it comes to free throws, right? Like Oregon played a hell of a game, but when you are the number 1 rebounding team in the entire country, that's the type of thing that's going to pull you through. So if it wasn't for Kennedy Meeks and his giant backside that's able to box guys out, we could be seeing a Pacific Northwest national championship game. So I think it was a great weekend for college ball. 2 really good games that came down to the wire and setting up for one heck of a game tonight.
Geoff, what was your take this weekend? Were you surprised at all by anything that happened this weekend?
I would say to some extent I was very, very surprised that Oregon didn't get the kind of offensive production that they've gotten out of Dylan Brooks and out of Dorsey throughout the whole tournament. It really seemed like they were out of their element against North Carolina. Of course, that game was right down to the edge. Tar Heels had enough, obviously, as Dom said, from Meeks at the end to win that game. And, of course, Joel Berry, his stock and his status really for tonight is still sort of up in the air. He was just really dreadful in that game, 2 out of 14 shooting, and you really can't have that kind of a performance from him, especially tonight against a really, really good Gonzaga team. So that was sort of surprising to me. And then Gonzaga's defense, where that's an element of their style and their team that's not really focused on as much, but they are one of the better defensive teams in the tournament and in the entire country this year. And I think you saw that when Sindarius Thornwell, who's been so dominant throughout the tournament, just was not a factor in this game.
Christian, did anything surprise you this weekend? I mean, everybody's pretty much of the same ilk that the better teams won, and it's not a shock that it's going to be UNC and Gonzaga. Is that your point of fact too?
I think what surprised me most is that I finally stopped being surprised by Gonzaga. I had picked them to be the first number 1 seed to go out in this tournament. I was not very high on them. I'll be 100% honest. I didn't take much stock in the fact that they come from the West Coast Conference.
Well, let's take a look at some of the.
Fault there.
No. I'm sorry, I got distracted for a second. Let's take a look inside each one of these games. Gonzaga and South Carolina. Was it really the inside-out game of Gonzaga, or was it that Nigel Williams-Goss was really the X factor? Geoff, I'm going to throw this one to you. What did you think really put Gonzaga over the top? Was it Karnowski or was it Nigel Williams-Goss?
You know, I'm going to probably take the cheap way out with my answer right here, but I would say it's a little bit of both because Gonzaga has shown that they're sort of known for more of the offensively talented team and the up and down team and the shooting team. But when you have a front line like they do with Karnowski, with Collins, these guys are all huge. They're 6'9", 6'10". They can bang in there down low. And I just think to a point that kind of wore South Carolina down a little bit, and their offense really didn't know how to go at Gonzaga's front line.
Now, let's take a talk about Frank Martin here. He did a phenomenal job taking 7th seed South Carolina all the way to the Final Four. Couldn't get it done in the semifinal. But is he the coach of the tournament, per se? Let's go to Dom on that one.
Yeah, I don't want to say that he's not the coach of the tournament because I'm afraid he's going to listen to it, find me, and beat me up because he's a scary dude. But yeah, I think that when you want to think about punching above your weight, Frank Martin did it 100%. Some people like say, Coach Few should be there. Well, you know what? Gonzaga was 31-0 at one point in the season. They were the number one overall seed for a hot minute there. Oregon had a team that everybody thought was going to do, was a little bit surprising reaching the Final Four, just with the loss of Boucher before the tournament. But yeah, Frank Martin just did such an amazing job with this team. And does he go a little J.J. Watt, a little too corny sometimes, saying that, like the real heroes are like the teachers and the police officers and firefighters, like sometimes. But at the same time, it worked. It got his team super fired up. And, he's just a great coach and a great dude. So I would definitely give him coach of the tournament honors for sure.
Well, being a teacher myself, I love that about Frank Martin. I love the fact
you're the real hero.
Yes, I am the real hero, especially
yeah.
with all the stuff I have to deal with on a daily basis. Good Lord. Christian, and I want to point this out, and I want to get everybody's take on this, but was it South Carolina didn't have much shooting. I mean, and their bench certainly didn't help. What do you think South Carolina could have done in order to counteract what Gonzaga was throwing at them and get them over the hump? Because it just seemed like they got to that precipice, but they just couldn't get over that hump. What could they have done better?
Oh, I mean, the biggest thing you got to remember with South Carolina, and this is why Frank Martin is the coach of the tournament, is the fact that they're the only team that we this late in March. I mean, yes, this is Gonzaga's first ever Final Four, but we're used to seeing them in Sweet 16s, in Elite Eights. We're used to seeing Oregon get this far. We're sure as hell used to North Carolina getting this far. So the fact that the thing with South Carolina is the fact that they're not that program ready yet to make that next step. What they did this year was incredible. Once they beat Duke and Villanova was already out, it really wasn't that big of a shock anymore at that point. Their biggest shock was beating Duke, in my opinion. But as the program continues to build and as Frank Martin continues to recruit, they're going to get and play against Karnowski down low. That's the biggest difficulty. And I've said this multiple times. The biggest key to winning a championship is having a tremendous inside presence. And it's very hard to go against 7'1", 300 pounds, and the winningest college player of all time in Karnowski. So as South Carolina continues to grow and as Frank Martin continues to be the stellar recruiter that he is, he's going to build that program a little bit more. Listen, this is not the last time you're going to see South Carolina in the Final Four. It's going to take one extra piece, and I do think it's that serious inside presence for them. That's all they really needed.
Geoff, what do you think South Carolina should have done differently?
Yeah, I think Christian makes a lot of good points here that, that's what they needed, that they were really lacking that they were going up against a guy in Karnowski, and he made a great point that that's what Gonzaga has been able to dominate as far as this tournament. They've, again, relied on a lot of their shooting, but they've been able to show different depths and different intricacies of their personality, and that really stymied South Carolina. And I think Christian hit the nail on the head that if they are going to take that leap forward as a program, they need to diversify and show a little bit more versatility down low and in their big men.
And just
go ahead, Christian.
Think long, because there's Carolina who may want to stay home now and be able to play for Frank Martin. I don't know if you guys saw his highlight the other day. Kid hit a ridiculous 360 windmill dunk. He put the ball behind his back in the air, and I hope South Carolina has that big guy.
Well, hopefully that's the case. Dom, you're up in Washington now, and is the feeling and the sense around the state that Mark Few and Gonzaga really did exercise some demons with this win?
Yes. I mean, yes and no. It's really interesting. Like, I hear this entire thing around the country of just like, congratulations, and like essentially anointing Gonzaga for making it to the Final Four in general, or making it to the national championship. And it sort of does feel like you could go in the locker room and be like, dude, like, guys, we're playing with house money here. Like, there was a couple of pieces that were written about like what Gonzaga and what this program did. Like the entire part of like Eastern Washington and the university really was like saved by this program. And the fact that they have been perennially good, even though they haven't made it all the way. I think that if you really pay attention to the last 2 minutes of this game, like, I know we're talking about Karnowski, we're talking about Collins, like, South Carolina blew quite a few opportunities to actually win this game. They had some rush shots. They didn't, you had Karnowski and Collins both with 4 fouls with like 2 minutes left. If you're smart, and these kids actually would have probably sunk in a little bit more, attacked the rim a little bit more, you probably could have fouled one of those guys out, and now we would have been having a completely different conversation. I think that Gonzaga does have a lot of the pieces in the matchups to be able to, and we'll get into this, to be able to beat North Carolina. They definitely are built. They're a great team. Really, everybody's come together there. But I feel like the mood up here right now is that they're hungry for the entire thing. And there'll be a little bit of that, hey, we feel good that we made it, but it's going to be another missed opportunity. Maybe not some Adam Morrison tears, but definitely a missed opportunity if they don't close it out tonight.
Now, Geoff, I got one question for you. Now, these two teams were very inexperienced as far as Final Fours go, and North Carolina on the other side, they have plenty of experience in this. Do you think the newness of being in a national championship for Gonzaga is going to have anything to do with this upcoming game?
I think to an extent it will. I mean, this team has been so battle-tested all year that I don't think it's going to have an overarching effect on the game. I think that Mark Few coaches his team in a way to where they are prepared no matter who the opponent is. They've heard the criticisms all year. They've heard the doubts. But let's remember, this is still a team that went 32-1. They've dominated outside of a few early games in the tournament. They've dominated every team they play. Before the South Carolina win, they had an absolutely crushing win in the game prior. So I don't think anything is really going to phase this team at this point. Yes, it's North Carolina, but they've seen North Carolina be beat last year. They know it can be done.
Well, it's going to be a good game. We'll talk about the overall game in just a few minutes, but let's move on to UNC Oregon. Don't want to spend too much time on this, but the thing that everybody's going to be talking about is that last sequence, the 4 missed free throws after hitting 19 of 23 from UNC, getting 2 big rebounds, lack of fundamentals by Oregon. Jordan Bell taking the blame, saying, hey, it's all on me, it's my fault. Was it really Jordan Bell's fault, Christian? Was it all of his, was it just all of his doing, or was it a combination of a lot of things?
If Jordan Bell had 43 rebounds in that game and had missed those 2, yes, it would have been all of his fault. But the fact of the matter is, Oregon was out rebounding North Carolina in that game prior to that last sequence. So no, it's not on Jordan. I mean, yes, part of it is, but it's not all on him. You have to gang rebound. You have to have guards, especially on a free throw block out. It's this simple. Especially when it's North Carolina shooting as Oregon, you have 4 players there to grab a rebound. North Carolina has 2. And then if you can box out the shooter, it really doesn't matter. So the fact that Jordan is taking it all on himself shows the kind of leadership he has taken upon himself since the Boucher injury. And I love that from the kid, but it's not all on him. It's got to go on some of the other guys as well, because there's no reason why Kennedy Meeks should have gotten both of those and been able to give North Carolina extra opportunities in the final moments. This is a win or go home. It's that simple. So there's no reason why that should have happened, other than the fact that Kennedy Meeks is, just an absolute animal. I mean, the kid is incredible. Yeah, he's got 9.4 rebounds a game, I think, but like 4 of them are O boards. He's one of the best offensive rebounders in the country on one of the best rebounding teams in the country. So I'm not 100% surprised that rebounding. Someone once said rebounding is all about who wants it more. And Kennedy wanted it more clearly than anybody wearing Oregon colors that day.
And Ryan, the first thing that as a coach I taught my team was how to box out. This is how you get a rebound. And that is clearly not what happened in the Oregon situation. Jordan Bell may take the blame for it, but he's certainly not the only one to blame, because he's not the only one that didn't box out.
No, I mean, you can look at many parts of the game that, it could have been lost. A couple missed shots could have been lost there. But you can't just take a small piece and say this was the only deciding factor of the game and place the blame on one player or one play, in this case about 2 different plays. But it's still, you got to go back to the fundamentals. I've never played organized basketball in my entire life outside of college intramurals, and I even know how to box out.
But even college intramurals, you're taught you got to go after it,
yeah.
and you got to box out. You got to box out. I mean, that's just fundamental basketball. But getting back to the game, Geoff, how big, and I don't mean this literally, but figuratively, how big was Kennedy Meeks in this game? 25 points, 13 rebounds. He was the one that really stepped up and said, hey, we're going back to the championship.
Yeah, he was all over the place, just as the rest of the panelists said. He is just such a load. He is such a load to handle. And I thought about that during the game. I thought, as much praise as Bell has gotten for his defense and his rebounding and block shots, and he's done a lot of that in this tournament. There was a play earlier in that game where Meeks went right at him, and as big and as athletic a wingspan as he has, he still had no answer for Meeks a lot of the night. And I just thought to myself, man, Meeks has a lot to handle. He can do so much, especially down low. And Bell, to his credit, or I guess to his discredit, if you're Oregon, he can't be your top scorer in that game. He had 13 points in that game. You have to get more from Brooks. You have to get more from Dorsey, who had 5 straight games of 20-plus points. So if you're Oregon, you have to offset what a great game Meeks had, and they just didn't have enough at the end.
Well, and they're saying that Kennedy Meeks at one point weighed 320 pounds. So imagine him putting on another 40 or 50 pounds and being maybe as big as Karnowski. But Dominic, what is, Geoff mentioned the whole Dylan Brooks saga. He fouled out, only 2 of 11, 10 points. We talked about Tyler Dorsey, and I talked about how he was my MVP for that Oregon team. We know Boucher was out with an injury. Where was Dylan Brooks this whole tournament? I mean, he maybe had a spat here or there, but I didn't really see much of him pretty much this whole tournament, especially this last game against UNC.
Yeah, he went MIA. I remember saying that on this show, that Dylan Brooks was going to be the name that everybody was going to remember as Oregon marched their way to the Final Four. And I guess I jinxed him, and that happened. It's a testament to the overall team that Oregon was able to put together. The way that entire unit, from Bell, everybody, what Ennis was able to do. I mean, he made some pretty big plays and really was a spark plug for this team to rally around the fact that Dylan Brooks was MIA and Boucher wasn't there at all, and they were a box out, a couple of bounce shots here or there away from taking down North Carolina. I mean, I think it's quite a testament to say that they were able to do that. I mean, Bell played out of his mind. When people say, or he says, "Oh, it's on me," or "Is it on him?" It's like, no. Like, the only reason that they're in that game, period, the only reason it's within single digits at all is because of the game that he had. So, Oregon played, an amazing game, but, behind Kennedy Meeks, like when you say, and everybody talks about the rebounds, and those were huge, but, he shot 11 for 13 from the floor. That's like 84% field goal percentage from the floor there. And of everybody else in that game that took over 10 shots, not over 7 shots, actually, not a single other person was even above 50% field goal percentage. So on either side. So, I mean, he really did strap the Tar Heels to his back and took them to the championship game tonight. And you know what? Like, they deserve it. They played a better overall all-around game, and it's going to be it's going to be fun to watch him and Karnowski battle tonight. That's going to be just it's the WWE it's the heavyweight matchup that we all wish we would have got from WrestleMania last night. Like this, it's going to be definitely better than Goldberg and Lesnar for sure.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I watched a little bit of WrestleMania last night. So
we all did.
We all did. I know it's a guilty pleasure of mine, but hey, Aaron saying that it was fun to watch South Carolina this tournament. Tim says 2019 national champs South Carolina was Zion Williamson. Corey saying it seems like that kid might be faking the blame a little bit. Guys, so we're going to move on. We're going to talk about the game coming up in just a minute, but I want to get your take this past weekend. Boy, what a big weekend for women's college basketball. Everybody was talking about it, not only because UConn lost, but because of the way they lost. And it was just, I know, looking on social media, I followed you guys and I saw you guys were all watching the game. I want to get everybody's take. First of all, Ryan, how historic was UConn's loss and how great was it for the game of women's basketball?
I think it was more historic of the win more than UConn's loss. Okay. I know we talked about the winning streak on this show. It was like one of our first shows.
Yeah.
Talking if it was good or bad. I thought it was great because it drew so many people to watching a Mississippi State UConn semifinal game and getting all that exposure over just in the Twitterverse, seeing how many tweets there were saying, "Oh, you got to turn to ESPN2 right now." It was real late at night too. It was
it was about 10:30 Central Time at night.
Yeah, so everyone was kind of going into bed and watching the finish of this one, and everyone was talking. There's a lot of impressions that women's college basketball had that they wouldn't have had without the streak that UConn had. But I think you got to credit Mississippi State for a great win, a great shot by Morgan Williams at the end to seal it in the most exciting way possible. And there's plenty of times where I thought, is Mississippi State really going to be able to beat UConn? Right. I just didn't believe it, so I had to tune in just to see if it would happen, and it did.
Well, and what shocked me here, Geoff, is that Mississippi State lost last year by 60 to UConn, and they were down at one point, I believe at halftime, it was like 49-12 or something ridiculous like that. And then they come out this year, and Morgan Williams, they list her as 5'5". I bet you she isn't any bigger than 5'1". She just takes control of the game, and she's just all over the place. And what a fun little spark plug to watch against UConn. She's just all over the place, and it was just a fun night of women's basketball to watch.
5'1". I think you're selling her short. No, I'm no. No, I think she is 5'5" as she's listed there. But yeah, it was interesting to me how Gino Auriemma, for all of the coaching savvy and all the knowledge he has about the game, it just seemed like those last few possessions for UConn were just a little bit rushed. And I don't know if she was switched off of on that final shot, but UConn defensively just did not look all put together on that final play. But in any event, that was a great shot by her. It was a great moment, and I know a lot of you guys are going to agree with me, but I think it was great more so for not just the streak by UConn, but the way Mississippi State won. And I think that in itself, in that event, was able to draw more of the attention for the women's game that I think it deserves.
Well, and Dom, one thing I was going to ask, and Geoff, you kind of brought this point as we're trying to segue, that does it take away from Mississippi State's win that they actually lost the national championship, or doesn't it really matter?
Oh, it matters. Like, would it have mattered if the Miracle on Ice would have beat Russia but lost the next game and didn't win the gold?
Right.
Like, that's exactly what this is. You beat Russia in women's college basketball, and then you didn't finish the job
against Finland.
And exactly. Like, that's what I think happened. Was it a great win? Yeah. Is this overall better for women's college basketball? I think so. Like, everybody expects UConn to win. And it's like before this, snapping this 111 game streak, what was the biggest win in women's college sports? The last time UConn lost. And before that, probably the last time UConn lost. And then before that, probably the last time Tennessee lost, because that's when they were good. Is it good for the program? Yes. Is Mississippi State going to remember it? Yeah. But is it going to feel super bittersweet for their entire fan base if they didn't finish the job? It sure is. But, Dawn Staley got there. It's still a great story for South Carolina. They had two teams that were dancing, where it's great. And, they ended up bringing one home. And, Asia Wilson was talking right away about watch us next year. We're going to be right back in this position. I think that that's great. You're going to give some fire to the UConn. There's going to be able to be some storylines that are going to be there. Maybe Dawn Staley is going to be able to pull some recruits from Gino, and we might get a little bit more of an even playing field there. But I mean, you have to tip the cap to the Bulldogs there. But Dawn Staley and the Gamecocks got it done. And I think that's what matters most, in my personal opinion. Get the ship.
Yeah, so now in the national championship game, Morgan William, the hero of the semifinal game, was benched the entire fourth quarter for attitude problems. And there's a time in the game where Mississippi State could have come back and maybe taken the lead to finish the job and win the national championship. But Christian, do you think that was a good move by Vic Schaefer to kind of show the team that there's still more than just basketball to win, that kind of, or was that the wrong time to send a message to the team about attitude in the fourth quarter of the national championship?
To quote a famous college commentator in a fictitious college bowl game, it's the last game of the year. You can't hold anything back. And unfortunately, Vic Schaefer did. He held back his best player, or arguably his best player. And listen, it's one thing to bench her for a couple of minutes, bench her at the start of the fourth quarter, but the entire 10 minutes, I'm sitting there, and with 1:40 to go, they're down 8 and they cut it down to 4. And with 1:40 remaining, 4 points in 1:40 is an eternity, especially in the women's game where a timeout after a made basket advances the ball. So it really made no sense to me why she wasn't there. I honestly think I don't want to speculate at all or try to put anything out there, but that to me screams of something more than just an attitude issue. It screams some sort of off the court issue or locker room issue, whatever time and the wrong place to have that moment and have that teaching moment, because not only did you teach her something, you kind of cost your team everything else and just said, well, her play or her attitude is a little bit more important because maybe my attitude's not that great. I know I'm going to get benched, but that's the best player on our team. You just took away our chance at a national championship. I do think Vic is going to have some questions to answer this summer, not only from outsiders like us, but from within his own locker room. I think some of those girls are going to wonder, hey, why wasn't she there for us to help us win that national championship?
Well, and we played Gino's presser last week and talked about he had talked about if you're not going to be into the game, you're not going to pay attention and focus. You know what? You're not going to play. You're not going to see the floor. I don't care who you are. And he was talking about Breanna Stewart and how she didn't play for 35 minutes of an important game, and everybody thought, oh, well, you're resting her for the game against LSU. And he said, no, she was on the bench because I didn't like her attitude. So maybe Vic Schaefer, who is really good friends with Gino Auriemma, is taking a page out of Gino's book and saying, you're not above anybody. No player is. I'm the coach. I determine what the rules are. I determine who plays, who doesn't, and if that means that we have to sacrifice a national championship, I'll take that responsibility. It's not on my head. It's on yours, and you're going to have to shoulder some of the blame for that. And I have a feeling that Morgan Williams is probably thinking, man, I should have maybe shut my mouth, or I should have said something different, because if it was for an attitude problem, you just never know, and you hope that they can get back to it. But how impressed, Geoff, were you with A'ja Wilson last night? She was absolutely tremendous, and she just there was a fight in her that you don't see from a lot of basketball players in general. But it seemed like she wanted it more than anybody.
Yeah, she certainly did. Very, very impressive player, and I'm very familiar with her. Before I came back to Ann Arbor, I was the studio host for Georgia women's basketball at IMG, and I remember having conversations with our play-by-play guy, Jeff Danzler, who's very familiar with that conference, that it just seemed like every single game, you want to talk about a player that's engaged, that can make those low-post moves around the basket, that can just muscle her way by people. She is engaged, and she is focused, maybe unlike Morgan. Every single play, every single possession down the court. She is a dynamite player, has the size, has the athleticism. Just very, very impressive all around watching her play last night.
Just amazing, and she's 6'7". You know, these girls nowadays, you never think, you think maybe 6'2", 6'3", but now these girls are 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", and no wonder why I think Morgan Williams is only 5'1" when she stands next to somebody like A'ja Wilson, who's 6'7". So I get it, but just a tremendous job. And Dawn Staley her resume is finally complete. She gets a national championship. She's done just about everything, Ryan, that you could do on the women's side, not only collegiately, but professionally, and you got to feel for her.
Yeah, just awesome job by her. It's all around good stuff. Can finally cross off that final letter on the bingo card, getting that national championship. So it would have been feel good either way on that, whatever side the game would have went.
All right, guys. Well, we are down to it. We are 15 minutes away from the end of our show. Just want to mention to viewers that at halftime of the NCAA National Championship game, we're going to be coming back here. We're going to give our first half analysis, talk a little bit about the upcoming second half, and give you something else to watch besides those talking heads on that big network. So join us here on Facebook Live. Give us your comments. We'll be happy to talk with you and talk with any of the viewers. And if you guys on the panel want to come join us, we'll be glad to have you too. But the time has come. Tonight, UNC, Gonzaga. What is your most intriguing matchup? We are going to start with Dom out on the Pacific Northwest. What is your most intriguing matchup tonight, player-wise?
The one I'm going to be watching is down low. You're going to be seeing Kennedy Meeks versus Karnowski. I think that is going to be just a beast of a battle. I honestly think that whoever wins the rebound battle there is going to end up winning the game. That's where the tempo is going to be set. That's where I think a lot of points are actually going to be coming in. So that's me 100%. My eyes are down low, and I'm excited to see who's got the fundamentals, who learns from Coach Barry and is going to be able to box out. That's what I'm stoked to see.
Geoff, what are you looking forward to seeing? What matchup are you looking forward to seeing?
Yeah, as much as I agree with Dom, and I think a big part of this game will come down to Gonzaga's trees down there down low with Collins and Karnowski. I think the most intriguing thing about this game is what's going to happen to Joel Berry and what's going to happen to North Carolina. So maybe it's a matchup that is not to be if A, Berry isn't playing, or B, he isn't playing significant minutes, because Nigel Williams-Goss was an absolute monster in Gonzaga's win over South Carolina in their last game. 23 points in that game, was all over the place for Gonzaga's offense, shooting the ball, driving, and his penetration. So if North Carolina, if they're having trouble against Gonzaga defensively and they're not able to manufacture points that way and on that side of the basketball, what are they going to do about Nigel Williams-Goss if Joel Berry can't be 100% and he can't at least match that productivity?
Christian, I had those two on my big board too, Meeks versus Karnowski and Williams-Goss versus Berry. What do you see as the most intriguing matchup tonight?
Well, just to be different, obviously those two matchups are going to be great, but here's where I truly think when it comes down to it, national championship games are usually won by an X factor. Be expecting. I mean, think about it. The Super Bowl was won by some guy named James, who we haven't heard of like prior to going into that contest. But and Chris Hogan, who was just phenomenal and we'd heard about all year long. But when you look at this game, to me, the biggest matchup is really going to kind of be on the wings. I know they list Justin Jackson as a forward, but he plays with a tremendous guard talent set and the ACC Player of the Year. And then for Gonzaga, the complement to Nigel Williams-Goss in that backcourt, Jordan Matthews, is being flown so far under the radar that only a guy like Roy Williams, who has been there before, even has him on the scouting report, even though he's averaging double figures in points. He's close to 5 assists. He's a couple. He really is one of their leaders for Gonzaga. So if Justin Jackson's having a hard night, and I know Geoff mentioned Joel Berry, if Joel's having a tough night too, it's probably because Jordan Matthews is in his jersey the entire night. So I really look to see who has the bigger impact from those two guys, Justin Jackson and Jordan Matthews. It's hard to think that we're talking about the ACC Player of the Year and a one-and-done guy, potential lottery pick in Justin Jackson as an X factor, but that's just the tournament for North Carolina. I'm really excited to see what Jordan Matthews has for the North Carolina backcourt today.
Well, and one thing North Carolina does not want to see is this.
Archidiakono, 3 seconds at midcourt. Jenkins gives it to Jenkins for the championship.
That is one thing that University of North Carolina fans do not want to see.
Just want to apologize for any UNC fan watching right now. We should have had a trigger warning before we played that.
Well, we wanted to give you a shot of what's not going to happen tonight.
It might.
You never know.
We can't look into the crystal ball and say, "Oh, this for sure is not going to happen."
Is there anybody named Archidiakono on?
No, not yet. But Christian, you had mentioned an X factor, and it's funny because Ryan, right here on our rundown, we have who's the X factor for each team. I have Collins and Matthews for Gonzaga, and I actually have Theo Pinson as UNC's X factor. Who do you see as the X factor tonight?
I think Justin Jackson. Yeah. Definitely, he's got full everything he needs to really compete in this game. I can't get over the improvement he had from last season and what he has become this year. And he's played a national championship game before. He's been there. He's feeling like he's got something to prove. He finally wants to win the national championship, and I think he's going to have just that little bit of edge over Gonzaga, who I don't want to say they're happy to be there, but they're happy to be there.
And just looking on Facebook, Aaron saying, remember when Dom said. We do. Chris saying that I really think Morgan Williams was mentally and physically spent, which is a good observation. He also said that Christian is on the money. Guard play is going to be key tonight. But, Dom, who do you see as the X factor? I think it's going to be Jordan Matthews from Gonzaga. I think it's going to be Theo Pinson. Everybody's saying Justin Jackson. I can't see a guy like Justin Jackson, who's been a standout, to be a real X factor. I mean, what's your take?
I agree with that, but I do think that if North Carolina wants to win, Jackson's got to be the one that's going to really stand out in this game. So if you want to really say like X factor, that's probably where I would end up going. I mean. He played 38. I feel you, because he played 38 minutes in the game against Oregon. He scored 22 points. I think that Theo Pinson is a good one. But, I mean, in my head, Gonzaga, if Gonzaga can shut him down and doesn't allow him to score more than 15, then I see Gonzaga being able to win this game. So I guess in a way that's like a reverse X factor. We'll call it that. He's the reverse
Call it the
X
Y
factor. The Y factor. That's
there you
it. So he's the Y factor, and the X factor is just Gonzaga. Whoever they want to throw at him to slow him down.
Geoff, who do you see as that X factor guy?
It's probably going to be Matthews. I know you guys have already mentioned it, but I just have a hard time not believing that it could be him because he's scored in double figures the last couple of games. He's been very, very integral to the Zags' success. And like we talked about earlier, if it's guard play and if Nigel Williams-Goss has to sit down for a bit or Matthews has to come in, or again, to what I said earlier, if Barry or that guard play from North Carolina just is not there, well, Matthews might be the guy for the Zags that can pick up the pieces. So I know it's kind of cliche to go with Matthews, but I really do think it's going to be him in this game.
I think not only can Matthews be it, but I think Zach Collins coming off the bench for Gonzaga could be a huge X factor as well, especially if somebody like a Justin Jackson or Joel Berry gets into foul trouble or has injury problems. I think that those two players could really, really be the thing that puts Gonzaga over the top.
Yeah, I think Gonzaga is definitely the underdog coming into this one, so they're going to need a few bounces to go their way. Got to get superb play from all five guys on the court, but I think if you get really good games from Matthews and Collins, they'll have a better shot, but I just have trouble picking against this UNC team this year.
So who is your national champion tonight?
University of North Carolina, 76-68.
76-68.
Yep.
Interesting. 8-point margin. Christian, we'll go to you. We want your final prediction. Who do you got?
You know, the last time we had a game somewhat like this, half court, which would have won the national championship. That's the closest thing I can in recent memory where the Cinderella, kind of finally getting over the hump, playing the established squad. I've been against both of these schools. I didn't think North Carolina deserved a number one seed. I thought Gonzaga would have been the first number one seed out. So clearly you guys have picked the wrong person to have on your show for your viewers. That being said, I'm done going against Gonzaga. I am fully behind the Bulldogs every stretch of the way. I think Mark Few has finally got the team that can bring a championship back to the Pacific Northwest. And listen, I mean, unless Kennedy Meeks has 20 rebounds in this game, I don't know that North Carolina can find a way around Karnowski down low. I mean, he's going to have to foul out early in this game for Meeks to be that dominant on the boards. So I'm going Bulldogs in this one. I'm going close. It's going to come down to free throws. And I don't think Karnowski allows Kennedy Meeks to get offensive rebounds in the final 5 seconds of this game.
Geoff, how about you? What do you have as your final prediction, final score?
Well, I've gone with Gonzaga all year. I have them winning in my bracket. They're my champion in the office pool, which I'm very, very happy that I'm going to get that $40 or whatever it is for the office pool. But let's remember, I mean, people are talking about this game about Gonzaga as if, yes, they've never been here, but they've been so close in years past. Yes, they play in the WCC in that conference, but they're number one seed. They've lost one game all year to BYU at the end of the season. They're one of the top scoring teams in the nation. Let's not forget they rebound quite well, in addition to that. So while North Carolina might have the rebounding advantage, Gonzaga's right there as well. And I think Gonzaga's defense might give Carolina trouble, might give them trouble in the half court. That might be a thing that you want to watch out for in this game. Gonzaga's defense is not focused on a lot, but it's been very, very good. And I just think Gonzaga, as people have said, they have the outside game with Goss. They have the inside game with Karnowski and Collins. They're a really, really complete team. I think this will be a close game, but I have the Zags winning 81-75.
And even if you're like Aaron and you don't like either one of the teams, we'd still like you to comment and tell us who you guys got winning, who you guys have winning in our Facebook comments column. Please, by all means, tell us who you have, who you might think come out on top or have come out on top. Dom, Pacific Northwest, I got to believe that you're going to be Zags all the way.
Yes, and yes. I predicted half of this half of this championship game, thinking that UNC is going to get there. In my head, I thought that Villanova was going to beat them. Now I think it's going to be Gonzaga. I think that Kennedy Meeks played his best game in the tournament. He just did it in the Final Four instead of in the championship game. He's not playing against a weakened front court. He's playing against a very strong front court, a team that can rotate and play a very big game. I think that Gonzaga's going to start strong, and they're going to stay steady. I haven't seen a very complete game from UNC in a while, so I think that there's going to be a time somewhere within about 10 minutes left to go in the second half that things are going to start to fall off a little bit for them, and they're not going to be able to catch up with just the barrage that you have down low. So Gonzaga's going to end up winning that one. I'm putting it at a 75 to 67 score.
Ooh, okay.
So go ahead and bet the under, set it like 155, and go Zags. Let's go, Coach Few.
So it's going to be the hosts against the panelists, because I am going with UNC. I know a lot of people said before the tournament, do not bet on a run and gun team like a UCLA or like a Oregon, but UNC has got something to prove. UNC has come in. Their whole thing this year was #redemption. We need to get back. They're back, and they want redemption. And I don't think there's anything that's going to stand in their way, whether it's going to be Karnowski, whether it's going to be Nigel Williams-Goss. I don't think there's going to be anything that stands in their way. Justin Jackson, I have a feeling, is going to come out, and he's going to score about 22 points. I think Kennedy Meeks is going to score probably 20 points and get 12 rebounds. And I just think Joel Berry is going to find something within himself to overcome those foot and ankle injuries. I see UNC winning 77-74. That's my prediction. Baxter seems to agree with me, only he thinks it's going to be by 10 or more from UNC. But guys, once again, great panel as always. We love having you guys on. We enjoyed having you guys on throughout the entire college basketball season. We thank you so much for your insight and your input, and we can't wait to have you back and talk about the outcome of the national championship game, and also looking forward to football and next basketball season as well.
All right, thanks.
Happy opening day, everybody.
Oh, wonderful. That was Christian Heimall, Geoff Chiles, and Dominic Garrett. Thank you very much for joining us. And Ryan, that's going to just about do it for us. Mm-hmm. But just a reminder that we are going to be on at halftime of the national championship game. So if you want a change of pace, tune into Brew Sports. Take a look at what we have to say, our analysis. Join in the analysis by commenting on our Facebook page, and we'll talk to you guys about the first half and what's to come in the second half. But it's national championship time, baby.
Yeah, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for, and I think we just have a Goliath first Goliath matchup here. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Absolutely. Enjoy your national championship. We will see you at halftime. For our producer, engineer, Baxter Colburn and David Bobke, and for Ryan Thies, I'm Barry Nelson saying so long. We'll see you at halftime. Enjoy the national championship. Go Tar Heels.